the 6th District. I do reside in Limbrook, 40 Harding Avenue, Limbrook, New York, 11563. I'm glad to be here, proud to be here before you today. What I'd like to do is just talk for briefly a second about the Capri Motel in West Hempstead. So, as some of you know, most of you may know, I sit on the County Legislature's Health and Social Services Committee, and I'm pleased to see what the Town of Hempstead is doing in regard to the Capri Motel on Hempstead Turnpike. The town's actions, along with the Nassau County Fire Marshal's Office and the County Police Department, have successfully closed down the Capri Motel. And I can commend your leadership, the entire board's leadership, for the actions they've taken to bring that to fruition. You know, for years, the Capri Motel has been a nuisance to the West Hempstead community, and it's kind of served as a hotbed of criminal activity involving drugs, prostitution, numerous arrests, violence, stabbings, attempted murder, and community members have consistently and constantly been bringing this to our attention as elected officials. So it's time to take some action. I'm glad to see that we are taking some action here. So the hardworking residents of our community and the local businesses should not have to endure such further criminal activity and in this dangerous environment that exhibits itself at the Capri Motel. So I just wanted to say I commend the town board. I hope that this motel is closed. It's very similar to the motel which was known as the Capri Motor Inn in Limbrook, which also had a long history of drugs and prostitution and arrests and overdoses, fatalities, criminal activity that occurred at that location. So I see a similar pattern. The hotel in Limbrook, the Motor Lodge in Limbrook was eventually closed. It was leveled and replaced with 80 beautiful townhomes. We'd like to see something like that, if possible, occur in the future in the West Hempstead community. The West Hempstead community deserves our attention in this regard, and I felt it was so important that I needed to come down and address this board and let them know my position both personally and appreciate your actions on behalf of the legislative committee that I am part of and the entire Nassau County Legislature. So, Supervisor Clayton and town board members, thank you for allowing me this time to speak. I wish you well. Thank you all, and God bless this great town we live in.
Thank you, Mr. Legislator, and thank you for your hard work on this issue. Your due diligence is appreciated. I know about a number of the residents, and they've really been monitoring it. We're very, very grateful for your partnership working with the county, as well as your partner in West Hempstead, John DeFrey. So thank you for taking the time, and we're glad you're here today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next I have on this, Doreen Candelino. How are you doing?
Good morning. I live at 68 Munson Avenue, West Hempstead. I've been living there since 1879. I was 15 when I moved out there. That motel has been nothing but a nuisance, and I really hope that you do keep it closed and demolish it. I have a 31-year-old son who has seen all the action that's gone on there growing up. It's been horrible. There's no reason for any child to see that, seeing the prostitutes crossing the street to the gas station. Growing up at 15 years old, he knew what was going on. He'd come home and tell me, Mom, you got to see the stuff that goes on there. The people that are walking by and going back and forth. It's terrible. I really hope that we can keep this place closed and done. Goodbye and good riddance. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come in today. Next I have Neil Rogenblatt. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Neil Rosenblatt. Mailing address is P.O. Box 425, West Hempstead, New York. I'm a board member and the Quality of Life chairperson for the West Hempstead Community Support Association. I'm here on behalf of the executive board and the residents and businesses who have contacted us with their concerns regarding the Capri Motel. Please note that our executive board voted previously unanimously that the motel be closed permanently. I've also had in hand to submit an additional 100 signatures, which will bring us up to 856 in a 2-week period from the West Hempstead residents who want this motel closed permanently. The motel is located 2 blocks from the George Washington School and Playground, 1 block from the Cherry Valley Little League Field, and right next to the Stop and Shop supermarket in Cherry Valley Center, just to name a few. The immediate area within a 2-minute walk of the motel is heavily used by residents and children. Many residents, in addition to residents from neighboring communities, consistently complain about being approached in the parking lots, and business owners complain about the motel residents causing issues at their places of business. Our residents should not have to accept and put up with the drug sales, prostitution, and drain on our police department and emergency services. 597 calls to service in 2 years, and that's only what the residents or the business owners pick up the phone and call 911. 597 reported. What about the unreported? Supervisor Clavey, Councilman Mascarella, you held a press conference 2 weeks ago at the hotel speaking on the quality of life, that it needs to be restored and maintained by keeping the Capri closed. We will not stand for our neighborhood to be overrun by crime and unlawful business. We, the citizens of West Hempstead, call on the town board to keep the Capri closed and keep our residents and children safe, living in a community that will allow our residents to move freely without fear. In closing, the West Hempstead community demands that the Capri be permanently closed. Thank you very much for your support.
Thanks for coming down, Mr. Rosenbaum. Next, I have Jeff Schroeder.
Supervisor Clavey, members of the town board, thank you. If you'll recall, I had reserved, based on your courtesy to...
Oh, the council before that. No, I'm sorry, it had West Hempstead. There are a couple others, so I'll...
So I'm going to wait until...
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Saul Brooks.
Good morning, Supervisor and members of the court. My name is Saul Brooks. I am the manager of the Capri Motel, where I have worked for 25 years. I am responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the motel, along with our staff of approximately 25 employees. As you may know, the Capri Motel has been a fixture on Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead since 1963. The present owner has operated the motel for the last 40 years. In my 25 years at the motel has passed every year its annual inspection by the Town of Hempstead. I passed the usual building inspection in January of this year. No problems or issues were cited in connection with the building inspection. As was noted at the last hearing, the town returned for a surprise additional inspection of the motel in May of this year. At that time, other than request that we install additional carbon monoxide detectors in one portion of the building, neither the town nor the fire marshal cited any deficiencies. Contrary to the town attorney's remarks at the last hearing, we did not receive any communication whatsoever from the town or from any other government body directing us to make any repairs or addresses any allegedly dangerous conditions. I provided my email address to the town building department at the May inspection at the request of the department, but I never received any communications thereafter, nor did the town return to the motel until August 7, 2023, when, with no warning, the town returned to close down the business. We have never failed to or refused to address any issue that the town has asked us to address. Furthermore, since the closure on August 7th, we have not received any instructions from the town on how we are to remedy the alleged emergency or dangerous conditions that supposedly justify the town's immediate closure of the motel. In fact, the town has never informed us as to the nature of these supposedly life-threatening conditions. To the contrary, during the closure on August 7th, the town posted a notice on our front door that says we were closed because we were a public nuisance. Not that we were closed for any alleged unsafe conditions, and that is what the people from the town who came to close us on August 7th said to the motel employees at the time when they gave them the reason for the immediate closure namely that the town was closing us because we were a public nuisance. I note that although we are located in one of the less scenic areas of Hempstead Turnpike, within a short walk from the motel, there are at least 3 bars and liquor stores, plus the gas station across the street, and several other vacant business properties. The motel itself is maintained in a clean and orderly condition. There is no litter on the property. The parking lot and open area are free of weeds and debris. We do not permit guests to congregate in the parking lot and open areas. Our rooms are clean and well maintained. In fact, the Nassau County Department of Social Services considers the motel to be an excellent, safe, and comfortable place for it to place persons in need of emergency housing, and from time to time, we've taken a number of people at the request of DSS. The motel is staffed 24 hours per day, and the premises is fully monitored by camera. Anytime that the police request our assistance in an investigation, we always cooperate and make our camera footage available to them. It is true there is police activity at the motel. However, a significant portion of this activity is a result of calls to the motel itself. We occasionally require police assistance to remove a guest who refuses to leave a room or who loiters around the property. Guests themselves are calls.
We have a 3-minute rule, but I see you do have a written statement. If you'd like to include that for the record, of course you will. Okay?
I'm done?
Yeah. But you want to include the statement?
I'll include the statement.
Okay, we'll have somebody go up there and we'll include that in the statement.
Thank you.
Okay. Next I have Felix Procacci. Morning, name and address, please.
Felix Procacci, Franklin Square. At the August 31st hearing on this issue, the town's outside counsel made a presentation and referred to a document package given to each of the town board members. Was this package uploaded to the town's website 24 hours prior to the start of the August 31st, 2023 meeting in accordance with Section 103E of New York State's open meeting law?
Mr. Conchi, we're not going to get into it back and forth.
It's a question. You can say I don't want to answer it.
Mr. Conchi, once again, you're not going to dictate how you
I'm
want to
asking the question and you have the right to not answer it.
Mr. Conchi, we are.
You don't want to answer, I'll go to the next question.
Mr. Conchi, no
In
one's
section 1991-5, it states the notice to the owner of a property being considered a nuisance must be in writing and provided not less than 10 days prior to the scheduled conduct of the hearing. Was the August 22nd, 2023 letter to the owner of 434 Hempstead Turnpike notifying them of the August 31st hearing provided to the owner at least 10 days prior to that hearing?
Mr. Conchi, I think the attorney made the representation.
Just say you don't want to answer it, and that's fine.
No, Mr. Conchi, once again.
That's fine. You don't want to answer it. That's fine.
Mr. Conchi, no one's.
You don't want to answer it.
No, Mr. Conchi, nobody said that, though.
Okay, you're just not answering it. You're not saying you don't want to answer it.
No, Mr. Conchi, no one said that at all.
Then answer the question.
Mr. Conchi, every time you ask a question, you try to give it, you kind of yell and interrupt everybody because you don't.
Okay, answer it.
Mr. Conchi, really, you really, people are trying to respond.
My clock's running while you're talking.
Mr. Conchi, again, you don't have to get so irate. We responded.
My clock is running while you're talking.
Mr. Conchi, I'm going to ask you to calm down and please conduct yourself in a proper manner at a town board meeting, not scream, be, so aggressive at these meetings. You're starting to concern a number of people.
On July 27, 2023, the Department of Buildings sent the owner a notice of predicate arrest from the certified mail receipt. It was received on July 31st, 2023. Did the town send the owner a notice of a second predicate arrest? I did not see that letter in the documentation provided for the town board meeting.
Once again, Mr. Conchi, I think the attorney, the last one, made his case and what he's fulfilled.
You done? So I thought I was not interrupting you last time, but apparently I was. I wasn't aware that you were talking while you were not saying anything.
Mr. Conchi,
On the meeting schedule for August, it only states August 1st at 10:30 a.m. Somebody looking at that schedule would think it's only an August 1st meeting, not an August 31st meeting. You did not provide the August 31st meeting on the website as required by law. And you can take as much time on this question as you want, because I'm going to go back to my seat. Has the Clayton administration ever met with any owners of the subject property in the 3.5 years you've been in office?
Mr. Conchi, any other questions?
Thank you very much for your help in not answering any questions.
Okay, Mr. Bacacci, actually, quite to the contrary, I think he did, and we appreciate you not interrupting people anymore.
Go to hell.
I don't have any other slips on this item. Did anybody else that, which we heard that did not sign in? Then, of course, Mr. Shriver, I told you I'd give you the courtesy of coming up again at the last meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor, Town Council members. I'm going to remind you what Mr. Macy told you about when he told you what your charge was today in order to determine whether you have the authority under Chapter 91 to close the Capri Motel Inn, which my client has dutifully and lawfully operated for the last 40 years in compliance with all the town laws. And there have been lots of things that have been said, 597 supposed calls for assistance and things like that. But the issues that are before you today, and we are a country of laws, and you have a law, it's Chapter 91, that is why we are here today, is whether you have complied with the procedural requirements of Chapter 91 in order to allow you to close the Capri Motel Inn based on the facts that you have before you. I'm not going to repeat the substantive issues we have with the specific ordinance at issue. I'm not going to go through things that I said before, but having been provided a copy of the exhibits that Mr. Macy handed up to you when we were here last week on to answer Mr. Bacacci's question, 9 days advance notice, not the 10 that are required under your own ordinance, it's clear to me that you do not have the necessary predicate to, and I can't say close the motel, because you've already done that. In fact, the Capri Motel Inn has been closed now for almost a month without having had the benefit of any prior hearing or notice. So let's talk specifically about what those deficiencies are. First of all, your ordinance, Chapter 91, requires that you serve 2 predicate notices. Each must give notice of what is deemed a predicate arrest, which must relate to a specific alleged violation of some specific code of the criminal law. The 2 that are at issue before us today are an alleged claim for a prostitution violation, which was claimed as the first predicate arrest in the so-called first predicate notice, the one that was mailed on July 27th and received at the motel on August 1st.
July 30th.
The second, on July 31st. And the second alleged a drug offense as described by Officer Crawford, who testified in response to Mr. Mason's questions when we were here last week. Now, your code, Chapter 91, and specifically subsection 4 of Chapter 91, requires that for a first notice to be valid, it must contain certain items of information, and certain things must accompany that notice. For example, the address of the arrestee must be listed in the notice, and a copy of the entire Chapter 91 must accompany that notice. And obviously, if you don't get a first notice, I may be a lawyer and somewhat math challenged, but even I know you can't get to 2 if you can't count to 1 first. Now, if you look at the first notice, it's one of the exhibits Mr. Mason marked last week. It does not contain the address of the arrestee. Now, your chapter says that if the address is reasonably available to the town, you must make it available. So I'm going to assume, for present purposes, that at the time at least, the town is not aware of the arrestee's address. But there's no indication as to whether the town ever learned of that. It was never provided. But more specifically, and more fatally flawed, is the failure of that first notice to contain with it a copy of Chapter 91. That makes that notice defective ab initio. And notably, unlike Exhibit 3, which is the affidavits of service in connection with both the second predicate notice, which as I noted earlier can't be 2, because you have no 1, and the notice of the town hearing, which was served 9 days before the hearing commenced. Again, a defect under the express terms of Chapter 91. You do not have in your record before you any proof by anyone, any testimony, any evidence whatsoever that that first notice complied with your ordinance. And the reason you don't is because it did not. In fact, the only testimony and evidence you have in your record is the one that you tried to keep my client from talking about when you cut him off before the end of his 3 minutes, but it's in his statement when he noticed and says that that first notice was served without a copy of Chapter 91, making it fatally defective. In addition, I'm going to point something out to you. You use in your ordinance, and based on the findings that are stated at the beginning, arrests as a proxy for supposed criminal activity. Leave aside the issue, as we discussed last week, that arrests are not evidence of a crime. Arrests are evidence of an arrest. It's an evidence that someone decided to send the police to arrest someone. And as we all know, that can happen anywhere. Your first predicate arrest, so-called predicate arrest, for prostitution, if you look at that exhibit, which is Exhibit 2, notes that this is not a prostitution arrest, because the Nassau County Police Department, according to the terms of the incident report, was operating a sting, meaning that there was no prostitution. The Nassau County Police Department lured someone who happened to have been renting a room at the motel at the time, who had the intent to commit an offense, and ended up, instead of hiring a prostitute, hiring the Nassau County Police. So you don't even have the underlying conduct. And as for your second supposed predicate offense, your chapter requires that the activity and the arrest occur at the premises that are at issue. At the Capri Motor Inn, which is 434 Hempstead Turnpike. If you look at Exhibit 3, which is the copy of the second notice, along with the notice of the hearing, and the incident report from the Nassau County Police that talks about the specific arrest for the alleged drug offense that occurred, you can see, and as Officer Crosser testified last week, that the actual arrest and what occurred across the street at 435 Hempstead Turnpike, not in my client's address. So even the second so-called predicate arrest notice and predicate arrest, which is actually the first, although it says second on the top, is defective even according to the terms of your own ordinance. And that is leaving aside the fact that the timing of this, when you waited until you came and closed the motel and didn't give my client an opportunity to address any of the alleged issues, renders the notion of notice a complete farce. And of course, that's on top of all of the other procedural and substantive constitutional defects that are occasioned by this action. Now, you're going to all do what you're going to do, and we're going to do what we're going to do. And you're going to run for re-election and tell everyone, just like you did before you had this hearing, that you all closed that motel before we had the hearing. And maybe the good citizens of Hempstead who are here will re-elect you all for that. I'm sorry to tell them all that as a result, though, of this conduct, their taxes are going to go up. Because in this country, you have to pay when you take actions that are not authorized by law. And that is what you are doing here. So you may not like to hear it. I know you didn't like it when I said it the last time, and you didn't like it when Mr. Procacci pointed it out. But these are your laws and our laws when it comes to the Constitution, which, as I said last week, applies even in the town of Hempstead. Thank you for your courtesy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharp. We appreciate your presentation. With that, I'm going to ask if I have a motion of the board.
Okay. So I just want to go on public record that we did do the math. We got the 2 by going through 1, and we're way past number 2. We're beyond that. So I'm going to say this. I move that the public hearing be closed and the board declare 434 Hempstead Turnpike, West Hempstead, a public nuisance, a public nuisance, a public nuisance. that is an immediate and substantial threat to the safety and well-being of the inhabitants and surrounding vicinity, and direct that 434 Hempstead Turnpike, West Hempstead, be physically boarded up, secured from further occupancy for a period of 1 year, and signs be posted upon all exterior doors at 434 Hempstead Turnpike, West Hempstead, declaring in bold lettering that occupancy, therefore, is prohibited under further order of the Commissioner of the Building of the Town of Hempstead, and the cost to the town of these actions be assessed and charged as a tax lien against the tax lots of 434 Hempstead Turnpike, West Hempstead.
I second the motion.
Supervisor Clayton?
Aye.
Councilman Carini?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Deputy Supervisor Dewsby?
Aye.
Councilwoman Miller?
Aye.
Councilman Mascarella?
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryder?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we're going to be